Hello, babes. Welcome to Coffee and Tequila, the show for people who love stories and love storytelling, where you get a morning show on Mondays and a late show on Fridays. Welcome to the morning show, everybody. My name is Zach, by the way, and this episode is kindly being sponsored by Helix Sleep, as always, and I have one of my favorite people in the world here with me, covering one of my favorite things in the world, pop culture. This is Troy McEady from Beyond the Blinds, the mega successful podcast now, and Dunzo. Troy, say hi to all the people.
Hi, people. Hi, Zachary.
Hello.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh my goodness, I love talking to you, Troy, about everything pop culture, because you know there's a shorthand with people who really follow pop culture, right, and loves this society and culture shit. There's a shorthand that we all know, and you can I can give you a couple keywords, right? If we were doing Family Feud or something, I need to give you a keyword. You'd get it, and that's why I love having you on here.
Well, you and I are very pop culture in sync. Like, we have a very similar view on pop culture. We're fanatical about a lot of the same people, so it's very easy. So I'm excited. I love coming here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so what we're going to be covering today is Life with My Sister Madonna, the 2008 tell-all memoir.
Yeah, I guess you could say a little bit of both.
I think tell-all. I would say tell-all. By Christopher Ciccone, Madonna's younger brother. This guy was... I always forget how much he was in her life, because he was in her life for a good 20-something years. Like, a large chunk of it, and not just, like, in and out. He was very much into the fold.
Yeah, he was a huge part of the sort of like image of Madonna, especially like the live tours, like her performances. Yeah, he was like very in it. Yeah, like you said. And also it's weird because I've never read this book, and I was always kind of taught as like a Madonna fan, like he's like the enemy, you know?
What do you think his intentions were with this book? Because I have heard him say both that these are his memoirs and that he wanted to kind of air out the truth and let everybody know that Madonna, let everybody know he wanted to credit himself for everything that he'd done, right?
Well, it does feel like it's like bullet points of his work that he's done with her, and then explaining why he was involved, how he was involved, how important he was, and how mistreated he was during the process of whatever thing that they were working on together.
Yeah.
And I think it's weird because I was like on his side from like, I understood his perspective, but I also completely understand the fact that like it's Madonna and I just love Madonna. To me, it almost read more like a book explaining how sort of deluded like a person can become by fame.
Yeah.
Like, all of the other stuff was kind of like nuance, and then it really was a story about how she had gone from being this normal person to like completely losing herself, and now she's like not tethered to any kind of like reality or anything.
Yeah, when you read sort of the synopsis of the book or like hear anything about it, it does seem like just a trashy like celebrity tell-all, right? But this is an incredibly nuanced take. I've got my Red Bull, I've got my notes, I've got all my facts, so I'm ready to fucking go. Are you ready to get into this, Troy?
I'm so excited.
Perfect. All right, but first we have to have a little word from our sponsor. Now it's time to tell you all a little bit about our sponsor for today's episode, Helix Sleep. Helix is a premium mattress and a box company that makes beds to fit your unique sleep style. We've had our Helix mattresses for almost 2 years now. Helix knows that everybody is different and everybody has their own unique needs, and so they've made a sleep quiz that'll match you with your perfect mattress based on your needs. I am an all-over sleeper. Alistair's more of a side sleeper. He likes a firm mattress. I like, more medium. We took the quiz together, and we got the Midnight Mattress. And one of the best parts about Helix is that they deliver the mattress right to your door for free. It comes rolled up in a box and is super easy to set up yourself. And if it makes you nervous to buy something online that you haven't tried, Helix has a 100-night sleep trial, so you get more than 3 months to make sure that you absolutely love it. And if you don't, they'll pick it up for you and you'll get a full refund. Now, if you're somebody you know is in the market for a new mattress and you think that Helix sounds right for you, you can go to helixsleep.com/tequila and you can get up to $200 off of your mattress and 2 free pillows. Alrighty, and we are back. We are going to be talking Live with My Sister Madonna, the tell-all by Christopher Ciccone, 2008 tell-all. So he starts this book like really going hard. This is like before they even get into childhood, right? Because he's going to go back to childhood, but he got to start out the book immediately like taking swings at her. And he says that, you know, when people come into her inner circle, you know, everybody's like kind of like glamored by all of the lifestyle stuff, you know, as you would be. And then when you get into the inner circle, like you feel the heat coming from Madonna. But as you get closer, I think he says, when you get right up into her inner circle, the coldest place of all is right up close to her. And that is like such that's vicious. That's harsh.
But do you think it's not true?
I guess. Okay.
Like if you look at the way she's sort of had what's the word? Like sort of throwaway friendships and throwaway relationships when she's done with that sort of like moment of her life. Like
it seems like there are a lot of people
not true.
It doesn't feel not true. There's a lot of people who come and go in her life. And also like you got to look at the life of a celebrity, right? The life of a celebrity is very fast paced, and somebody like Madonna, who I do assume she surrounds herself with a lot of yes people, right? Especially, and she has such a long career that the longer you go being kind of like removed from regular people and regular society, it's only going to be like that, and it's only going to get worse. Right. So I think throughout this whole book, I believe everything he says. I totally believe everything he says. I think his perception is very skewed at times, and I think he probably omits information, but I believe every word he says and every story he says. And I do think that she is probably we also got to look at this through a 2008 lens, right? This was 2008. So I think at that point, especially, she was very yes people oriented, and she did not want like anybody who was going to tell her any bit of truth, she was going to send off a fax to, you know, and tell them they're out. There's so many faxes in this fucking book.
Oh my God.
But you know, he tries to paint himself as this guy who's very disillusioned with her fame and all of her, you know, perks and her stardom, but he very much is. The Ciccone family is this really big Catholic family, right? They're from Michigan. Madonna grows up in Michigan, despite the English accent, the New York accent, all of the different accents she's gone through. She is from Michigan, Bay City, Michigan. Okay. She grew up in the suburbs. He lets you know that too. He lets you know she is from the suburbs. She is not this street kid who was thrown out by their dad, right?
Oh God. We'll talk about that, right?
Yes. But they grew up in a family with a lot of kids. There's like 5 or 6 kids. And when they are really young, Madonna's 5 when their mother dies. And this is a part of the Madonna mythology anyway. This is very much something that she has baked into her own story and makes sure everybody knows about it. This is another reason why she got so close with Rosie O'Donnell at one point, because they both lost their mothers really young. I do believe this had such an effect on her, and it did have an effect. It had an effect on all of them, right? They're all going through this. They were all kids in that household. But I think because we're focused so much on Madonna and Christopher here, that it's very easy to see how it affected both of them. So I think it affected Madonna in a way where she needs that attention and she needs that adoration from the public, because she wasn't really getting it from her dad, and her mom wasn't there to give it to her and to tell her, you know, she just missed that maternal love. And Christopher, I think, was subconsciously trying to get that from Madonna, as if Madonna was his own mother. That's what I took from it. Not to psychoanalyze, but
no, I understand what you mean. It did kind of feel like he had placed her into this like category of like, okay, well then you're my mom, and like you're unattainable. So he spent his entire life trying to like get her to like be that, and she was always like, bitch, no, I don't want to be. And for her, I think her mom dying, aside from like the Catholic Church, that has to be like the biggest thread throughout her career, right? Like the strongest thread, her mother's death.
Because I think that was the thread that went both into her storytelling as far as music and film and everything she's done in terms of storytelling, but also with the way the public sort of sees her as this attention whore. And, you know, everybody, she's always after this attention. Well, here's the root right here. Here's the root. And Christopher spends so much time in this book not saying that he's like after the adoration of the public, but after her adoration, right? He always wants her to say, like, anytime she calls and she says, "Hey, Christopher, I need you," and he says it throughout this whole book. Anytime she calls and says, like, "Christopher, I need you," he's right there. Because he wants to be there for her. He wants to. It's like mother calling, right? If my mom called me and said, "Hey, I am going through this really hard time. I need you," and that has happened, and I'm there, you know, and that's exactly what he's doing. So that happens pretty young. And he spends a lot of this book as well just kind of going through Madonna's story rather than his own. And I have seen an interview where he talks about it. He's like, "These are my memoirs, and you can't really talk about your own memoirs, or I can't talk about my memoirs without mentioning Madonna because they're so closely intertwined." However, I get like barely any of his story in this damn book.
Well, okay, so the weird thing is, like, you don't get any of his story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you get these glimpses of like what made him. There are two things that he explores: his homosexuality and his art.
Yeah.
And how his art is a direct like translation through Madonna. Like all of the art, his home decorating and all the stuff that he went on to do later, his tours, his music videos, all of that stuff, he learned it through kind of being her shadow.
Yeah.
Really, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's almost like the way that he paints her, like the idea that he has of her is like, she is the greatest pop star to ever live, and it's because she was born to be one.
Mm.
Like she was born to be this person, and all of the stuff that she lacks, like emotionally and stuff, makes her a better public figure.
Yeah, but just a shitty bitch who should burn in hell.
A piece of shit sister.
Oh my gosh,
terrible daughter.
Their dad is like, I have a love-hate relationship with the dad too, because he says that they have such racial tolerance because their dad specifically moved them into a multiracial neighborhood to instill tolerance in them, right? Such a great thing to do. And especially at the time, like very forward-thinking, very like progressive for the time, but also like as we see later on in the dad's sort of reaction to his son's homosexuality, it's gonna get shaky there. So the dad's another interesting one, and I would like to have seen more of his relationship with his dad in this, but we don't get a whole lot of that. We get like Madonna at the talent show. We get Madonna, deciding that she doesn't want to do anything sensible. She wants to do, go for some sort of career in the arts, and her dad having to like just support that and accept it. And then, like you said, we get him learning about his own self and what he wants through her. This is it does read very much as the, not to put a stereotype on it, but as the gay who, like, if my older sister were Britney Spears, Madonna, Lady Gaga, who all the gays fawn over, of course I would be taking every single cue from her, right?
Yeah. And you would have worked in like wardrobe, and you would have done stage shit or whatever. Like,
I would have been dressing her. I would have been having creative meetings with her about her tours. Like this entire book tracks as young gay kid who is obsessed with his gay icon of a sister, right?
So one of the things that I really liked about the way he wrote this book, and it's just sort of sprinkled throughout, is that it's not like specifically stated, but like Madonna's always been so vulnerable and like open about her life, right?
Yeah.
And like her life is like poured into her art, like whether it's like through lyrics or like imagery or music videos or whatever, like Madonna's life through her art.
Yeah.
And it's cool like hearing about that stuff from her childhood and seeing how it reflected later in her life. And he used the example, he would always give these examples in the book of like, you would later see this reflected in like the Like a Prayer video.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like I liked that aspect of it where it's like, yeah, like she really is like she like kind of puts her money where her mouth is in a sense. Like who she is who she is.
So after their mother dies, their dad goes through a bunch of nannies, and one of the nannies is Joan. And so Joan, I love all the early Madonna stories.
I know, they're the best.
Joan comes in, and she's like nanny for a hot second before the dad marries her, because he needs a wife for all these damn kids, right? A mother for all these kids. And all these kids are like, fuck that. This bitch is not going to be my mommy. And Madonna is super, like, she butts heads with Joan a lot. I would like to know, like, how the other cuts kind of were with Joan as well. We don't really get a whole lot of that, but we get one scene where Madonna comes in like, what happened? She comes in at some point and Joan like slaps her and Madonna like backhands her right back. What was that for? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Was it chores?
It was some sort of like back talking, like smart ass, something.
Yeah. Something like that, like some kind of like stomping up to your room and slamming the door kind of shit, But yeah, she slapped Madonna across the face and Madonna slapped her back.
Yeah. And I have to say, the child that I was, if my parents had ever like officially divorced and married other people, I'd have been the exact same way, Yeah. I would have been very like against whatever the other parent was. But Madonna like never really like accepts Joan around this time. And Christopher does a really good job of kind of showing the nuance with Joan, right? Like Joan comes in and there's all these kids already like baked into the family. Like these are not her kids. But she is now their mother. So she has to be both strict with them because they're all like hellions running around and like kind of get a free pass with their dad because, their mother died and he's got sympathy for her, but she's got to like put the iron fist down. And at the same time, she's also really concerned about all of them. So I love the story where Madonna like goes out with her friends and gets her ass kicked by a biker.
Yeah.
And comes home all like bloody and bruised and Joan kind of fixes her up,
I just like have a clear image in my mind of like what it looks like,
Yeah, and I just can't see it, Like I picture Madonna now or Madonna 10 years ago and she'd have called her damn security. She'd have filed a lawsuit. She'd have gotten, this was street Madonna,
Yeah.
She's going out and getting in fights with bikers coming from Christopher Ciccone's mouth.
And bad.
I hope this scene is in the damn movie that Madonna's putting together about her own self because I have not heard this from her mouth. Madonna was just the one who got out first, right? Madonna was the one that was really headstrong, was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not gonna take this math class. I'd rather go and dance by the boardwalk or something, whatever the Madonna thing is.
Yeah. I almost feel like her mom's death, like, sometimes like, being an outsider or like having something traumatic happen to you like forces you to kind of view the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And I feel like it forced her to like see the bigger picture, which is like a lot of what I'm doing is bullshit and I'm bigger than this like small bubble that we're in. Like I see outside of it,
Yeah. And Madonna really was like, she was the one getting into everything and getting into all of these creative things. And Christopher really was like the gay little brother who followed along and was super into it. And Madonna nurtured that. Madonna gives him all of this creative attention and like sees that when he's creative, like she nurtures that. She's the surrogate mother in that way, and it kind of adds to that a little bit later. And she takes him, she tries to get him into dance and he says, oh, well, Dad'll never go for that. And she says, I'm going to fucking talk to our father and he's going to fucking accept it. Right. And she does. And she's just fucking cool. And she was like this cool older sister. She takes him to his first gay bar. They show up and like, he's like, there are no women here. It's also, you have to, if you're ever going to read this book, you have to listen to it because the way he like speaks about anything is very monotone and very like to the point.
It's good. It's like ASMR.
He's like, she takes me to my first gay bar and I say, Madonna, but there are no people here or there are no women here.
He's like, I'm withering in fear.
Yes. And I can just hear Madonna on the other end, like, just fucking dance, get your ass grabbed, And he like starts kind of like, oh, I might be a little gay. I don't know.
And I like how he describes viewing her change at the beginning, like at that point where she's like, meeting artists and like hanging out with all these cool art house people and dancers and like producers and stuff, and she's like, her style's like slowly changing and he's watching her turn into this like cool girl,
Really though, honestly. And she wasn't just, a pioneer in the music industry that again, like we are losing that. That's a whole nother conversation is how we are losing like the legacy of Madonna and people are forgetting that. But she really was a pioneer in the music industry. Yes, yes. She was a pioneer in the music industry, but she was also a big pioneer in her own family, right? She was the first one to go out and do these things and take these risks, you know? She was the risk taker, and everybody saw that it worked out for her, and they got to like piggyback off of that, right? And Christopher's probably the one who did it the most. She moves to New York, and he's like quick to shoot down this door. He's like, the big in Madonna mythology is that she showed up to New York with $35 in her pocket, and she told the taxi driver, drive me to the center of everything. And so he takes her to Times Square because he thinks it'd be funny, right? And it's like this big grand moment in the beginning of your destiny. And Christopher Turner is like, yo, that didn't happen, right? She's from the fucking suburbs. She didn't have just $35. She had support. And she probably did. What do you think about this? I have a big question for you. It's like, what do you think about people rewriting their own sort of narrative? Especially the early narrative that can't really be tracked. Like, Lady Gaga has done this up the fucking ass, right? Like she, as hard as she tries, we know she was from this big ass apartment in fucking Manhattan.
She's a punk rocker from the streets.
And she was bullied so hard, and everybody's like, "How were you bullied?" And it's like, "Well, my mom would cut my hair when I was asleep, but it's like little trimmings on the bangs or something like that."
She is her hair.
But what do you think about that? I have really
strong feelings about this.
All right.
So, and it may shock you. I think that this is imperative to becoming a superstar.
Okay.
I think it's really important. I think that people who understand what it means to be an actual like superstar, like a Michael, Mariah, Whitney, whatever, you need an origin story.
Yeah.
You literally need an origin story. Every person who's ever reached like that level of like icon, their fans can recite their origin story, whether it's real or fake. Like, you and I know the story of Britney Spears leaving Kentwood, Louisiana, and all that shit. Like, no matter how much of it is bullshit, we know it. Like, you have to have that. Michael Jackson, Gary, Indiana, the whole thing, we know it. Janet, like, it's like the pop stars that don't have that, they don't reach that icon level to me.
Yeah. And it really is such an interesting topic that alone could like be its own damn documentary. It's the origin stories of the most famous celebrities, you know, and where, because you have the celebrities who are like sort of, I don't know, Joan Crawford, who was she was destitute. She was from broke people, you know. She probably had to like do some things that she wasn't going to ever tell about, like, you know, dirty adult movies. That's the rumor, right? That she did some adult movies to kind of get by at one point. And somebody like her who like pushes that off to the side and tries to create this idyllic childhood. And then you have the new wave of stars, right? Who want they want the rough background. They want the rough childhood because it's that rags to riches story that we all kind of aspired to. I remember hearing the Madonna story and being like, fuck yeah, man, I can move to New York. Take me to the center of everything.
Oh my God.
It's
iconic.
Even if that may not be the entire truth, right? There's still a morsel of truth in that. And I think this was Madonna's perception of her own, you know, origin story. And you couldn't tell me now that that's not so ingrained into her mind that is the truth now for her. You know, she's not remembering any facts that may have been switched up or changed. That is the origin story. To each their own, you know. You create your own story, and the way you're going to tell your own story to other people is like, that's your damn business, right? But
I agree. And you need to have a story for like late night and for Dateline, and when they write a book about you or whatever, like you need that sort of quippy, quick story, you know, of like how you got here. That's like really enticing to people, you know?
Yeah. And we do get like a decent origin story from himself as well, from Christopher here. Because we've got to remember this is Christopher's book, and his story is, I wish he would have taken a little bit more time to like remove himself from the anger that he was clearly going through and the bitterness he was going through as he wrote this book, because it is a really interesting sort of lens to look at it through, is the sibling of like the superstar, right? And especially the gay sibling of the gay icon of a superstar. I would love a book like that. and how like he kind of recognized that. And did he recognize that? Because after Madonna moves to New York, he follows her to New York, right? He gets to go and like back and forth from Michigan to New York. He gets to try out all these different things. She has him, and she's really like, she does do a lot for him. He sleeps on her floor when she is sleeping with a bunch of cockroaches, and he says there's cockroaches all over me, but he's like complaining about it. He's like, there was cockroaches, but you know what? Whatever. I just needed a night of sleep. Madonna starts getting a little bit of success, and her first star is Everybody, and he says, it's a catchy song, but I think it's trash. I don't tell her this. He's like always doing shit like this. Meanwhile, she's like, hey, come be in this video. Come be in the Lucky Star video, right? Like giving him all of these opportunities as she's going up. He's going up with her. And that's the sibling that she picks, because she had other siblings to pick from too. But this was the creative sibling that she saw, a little bit of kinship in and nurtured that for him. He gets a job under Simon Fields, the producer of the Lucky Star video, as a production assistant, and gets to go work on all these music videos and stuff like that. And he goes and works on the Lucky Star music video, and he says, after working a 15-hour day, I resolved to myself that I would never do this again, and I would only direct music videos from now on. And it's like, entitled privileged bullshit. Who says that? Anybody going to Hollywood would kill to work on music videos, kill to work on a film set, and you're it fucking sucks. You're probably not getting paid shit, right? But like, not everybody gets to say, oh, I've decided I will only direct the music videos from now on. Like, who the fuck is this guy?
He has this way of, tell me what you think about this, because I don't know if my brain can even make the words right now, but he has this way of presenting the nice things that she does for him as like, oh, like that's my little brother. Like she sort of sees through him. Yeah. Like she never sees him as like a whole person. Like there's always like a catch or like something that she wants to gain from it in his perspective.
Yeah.
Or he'll find out later that she benefited from it in some way that she like didn't tell him. Or she's just like really like rude and like lax about it. Like she'll offer him something and like dangle it and then maybe take it away or things like that. Like it feels at the beginning still very like brother sister to me.
And that's we take this like steep downhill from brother sister, but it really we have to like, he's not recognizing that this is her up and up as well, right? She doesn't have all the power in the world. She's doing what she can. Right. Everything's moving super fucking fast for her. Like when she wants him to come out so that he can be a dancer for her, right? And then she picks another dancer. I guarantee the thing he's leaving out is that it was moving really, really fast, that she needed a dancer right then. I could see him being like, but Madonna, I have to go on this date with Denny right now, right? Like, right. But she's got to go. She's got to go. This industry is going fast. And if she like would have sat out 5 minutes, we wouldn't have gotten Madonna. She would never have become Madonna as we know her, And I think that's what he's kind of missing here, is that if you're going to be on the train, you have to be on it full throttle with her. Take your opportunities from it. He is throwing out all of these opportunities and does nothing with like hardly any of them, right? Like nothing. Instead, it sounds exactly like, Madonna's throwing jobs at me. I just wish she would stop throwing jobs at me. I wish she would stop giving me opportunities, Like he's too fucking good for it.
It's annoying too, because it's like, he's so quick to be like, her origin story is fake. Like none of that stuff is real. But like at the same time, this is a young girl. Yeah. Inventing what it is to be a female pop star. Creating it. Yeah. On her own. She's like a child. And she's in New York City on her own. Like, it's like, she has cockroaches, but like, what did she even do to get that apartment? Like, whether the origin story is fake or not, like, Madonna went through some shit. Yes. Like, Madonna went through hell. And it's not her book. And I guess that's not like necessarily his story to tell, but he tells all of her other stories. Yeah. And he completely leaves out like how traumatic that whole thing must have been for her. you know?
And especially at the time, right? We also have to take into account this was the 70s, 80s, New York City. It was
Yeah.
fucking rough then, okay?
Yeah.
It was rough. She was getting robbed all the time.
Yeah.
She says that her and her friend slept in a synagogue, but I know they only slept in there for about 2 days because she probably wanted to be noticed or something like that. And it's like, dude, she still fucking slept in a synagogue because she probably had nowhere to go right then, right? It doesn't
So
matter how
sorry.
long it was for. That was probably scary. There were probably like homeless, drug addicts running around who could have like done anything to her,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
she could have been a victim of somebody who decided to, take this young girl and just murder her and,
Yeah.
leave her body on the fucking sidewalk. But he like completely misses that point and misses the point that like him going to New York City, he always had somewhere to stay. She was finding him somewhere to stay. He never had to sleep on the street. She always made sure that he was like taken care of in a sense, right? And
Yeah.
she is going up and she's bringing him up with her. She's giving him these opportunities. I also find it really, to give him a little bit of credit here, I find it really interesting that he had so much involvement in her sort of image. We hear a lot about how, at first, with Lucky Star and all of the crosses and all of that boy toy, that was all, her, that was her picking things and like kind of styling herself. And he would always make comments that like, she looks ridiculous, but I won't tell her this. He always says shit like that. It's like,
Yeah.
I hated this. It was tacky, but I will never say that to her. She's a horrible actress, but I will never tell her.
It's like he thinks it's like only I can say these things as her
Yeah.
brother. He thinks it makes him like cool.
I will never tell her, knowing that she'll read the fucking book, right? That she's about to read this fucking book. So he's getting to tell her anyway. But like I thought it was really cool that he pretty much told her, "Hey, you need to glam up and go with an old Hollywood like styling," and she fucking does it. And this is where we get the sort of the Marilyn Monroe styling or like the styling of old Hollywood. But that is so iconically Madonna. What is your most iconic like vision of Madonna when you think of Madonna?
My
Yeah.
my Madonna personally is like early 2000s Madonna.
Okay.
It's like my
Okay.
favorite, like music and like
Mhm.
Don't Tell Me. Like I love like as he will talk about, I like Drown World Tour Madonna.
Yeah. I
Or whatever.
I think I would agree with you just because of like when I was bored and what I was coming up with, the type of Madonna that I was coming up with, but I still like I see the Madonna that he's talking about here, like right? Like
Totally.
I see Marilyn Monroe Madonna and he does make a really good point that she is not so much like Marilyn that everybody would think, right? Like she and her inspiration was never really Marilyn Monroe.
I like that. I like
I
that
did
part.
too. I did
That
too because
section.
it makes sense, right? Like she Madonna isn't self-destructive. Marilyn was a pretty self-destructive person, right? Marilyn
Right.
would get down on herself. She had a lot of insecurities. Madonna had none of those. If Madonna had an insecurity, she fucking soldiered through that shit, and
Yeah.
there was no other option for her. Her option is only up and up and up and up and up, rising star. That's her only
Yeah.
option, and she's a fucking workaholic. That's her self-destructiveness, right? Is being a workaholic and putting her public image in front of anything and everybody else.
Right.
So she marries Sean Penn, and I think the Sean Penn stuff is so traumatic, and he is really decent about it as he goes through it, and then really shitty
Yeah.
about it later on when he gets to Guy Ritchie. Because when he gets to Guy Ritchie, he says, "Oh, I would have preferred having Sean Penn as a brother-in-law." Sean Penn is beating the shit out of
I
Madonna.
know.
He is so abusive to her.
I know. He was her K-Fed.
He was a fucking K-Fed, right? And she was so fucking sprung up on him. She still is. Do you remember a couple
I
of years ago when she
know.
had those pictures with him? Like she like saw him in public, and there was all those reports that she was like really into him again and trying to talk to him again.
Yeah, and they obviously made some kind of pact to be like, let's just deny everything we ever did
Yeah.
to each other.
Yeah,
Because now she'll say like, Sean never hit me, he's never touched me, but there's like police reports and stuff
Yeah.
that he did. So yeah, that's crazy. The Sean years are
fucking
bananas.
wild.
Oh my god.
wild. And I
mind-blowing.
think their relationship is one that we don't really even reference in terms of pop culture enough anymore. They were like,
Yeah.
they were a superstar couple. They were a power couple. This is like the peak of like Sean and Madonna mania. You know, there's always photographers out there. He's always like getting pissed at the photographers and flipping them off and like trying to attack them. And he gets in trouble for attacking photographers. And there's one night where Christopher's listening to them fucking go at it in this hotel room, and Madonna comes running to his room and like falls into his arms. And why would you write about a story like that? Why would you write about a domestic violence victim's trauma and then at all ever say anything negative about it? Because he's like, I get to be there. He does put it in the way like, I get to be there for Madonna, right? I get to hold her, I get to be there, and I hate Sean Penn at this moment.
Right.
I want to beat the shit out of Sean Penn. But like, you're still giving this story that is probably super traumatic for her. And if she's not going around giving interviews about it and not wanting to do the Diane Sawyer interview about it, right? It's not something she wants to talk about, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. His perspective on the Sean relationship is like very odd to me. And, I almost feel like with Sean, first of all, have you ever listened to the song Till Death Do Us Part? It's about Sean,
Okay.
and it's about
I
their
probably
traumatic
have.
relationship.
Yes, I probably have.
And like how he'll like break vases and she'll lie, and then he beats her up because she's lying and he doesn't like that. And then she screams, he hates that she screams, and then he'll hit her because she screams. Like he is a very intense, scary, violent person. Like I did a Madonna and Sean episode like the first year that I was doing Dunzo, and I think it was like one of the first like really traumatic relationships I'd ever covered. And I was just blown away by how publicly abusive he was, and like that it was just like okay for a man to be like that back then. And because Madonna was like a whore, it was like, well, she deserves it, or like she's doing something that's probably pissing him off and like making him act like that. But I remember specifically like one time he brought a paparazzi up to his hotel room. He was on like the 50th floor, some crazy whatever, and he dangled him off the balcony by his legs.
Yeah.
Like he was just fucking crazy. And the way that he romanticized that relationship in the book was like very weird.
It is weird, and it's a weird thing with, I feel like it's a weird thing with the Ciccones, with the whole family, because I feel like the whole family probably shares the same sentiment that like Sean Penn was one of the ones that they liked most out of all of her relationships.
Got away.
Yeah, and he even remarks in the book that her public perception really does start going down. This is the first time it really starts going down, and she's getting backlash because of this relationship, right? I hate even bringing this up, but like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, not sort of the dynamics of their relationship, but the amount of hate that we're seeing towards her right now was way worse than he ever had. Way worse than he ever had. And I feel like that always goes back to the women. It's always the women who get it worse and who get, burned even worse than the man ever does. Sean Penn could have beat the fuck out of her, left her in the hospital, and they would have been, well, Madonna's annoying. So, whatever. She's a bad actress. Shanghai Surprise is shitty. Like, that's what we were talking about, is Shanghai Surprise being shitty, and she was bad at it?
I know. It's... as he's choking photographers in public, I've said this a million times. I think that we as a society, we get really excited when we have a legitimate reason to hate a woman. Yeah. And it's almost like when we have like a tangible reason, then it's like, great, let's get her. Like, we've got something, let's fucking get this bitch. We finally got her. And that is happening right now with Amber. It's like people have these like reasons now that are tangible to like basically rip her apart. Yeah. And it's wild, and it is crazy to see how the perception of Madonna changed because of him, and like, how he was unable to handle even how much, because she was already so famous, and she got even more famous when they were together, and she became more famous than him, and like that was really like the thing that he obviously couldn't handle.
And he acted like he didn't care about the fame and stuff like that, but clearly he did. Clearly, like, this was something that really nagged at him and really bothered him. Christopher even there's a moment where Sean Penn, like, pulls Christopher in one night, and they're like, I don't know, they're in the kitchen or somewhere, and he says, let's cut our hands and become blood brothers. And so they, like, put their hands together and become blood brothers. And then later on, like, way after the divorce, way after everything, Christopher sees Sean Penn. They run into each other on the red carpet for some event, and Sean Penn says, hey, do you remember that night we became blood brothers? And, like, you know, Christopher thinks this is going to be a nice little, you know, reminiscent moment. And Sean Penn just says, oh, you don't have AIDS, do you? Like, do I need to get myself checked out? It's like, oh, fucking hell, man. This is I don't see a redeemable characteristic here in this man, but that we all are just fantasizing over in this damn book. And it's horrible. It's horrible. And this is a horrible thing to have said to Christopher. And yet, Christopher later on still says, I would have preferred Sean Penn over Guy Ritchie, right? It's like, maybe both of them are shitty. Maybe equally. We just put them both off.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you remember in the book if he said, because obviously he writes about the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Did he write about Sean shooting at the helicopters at the wedding?
Yes.
Okay.
And that Sean was just like, got so angry about, and like Madonna was like, Sean, stop it, please. I have to calm Sean down. But meanwhile, she loves all the attention that's going on. I also like have never been able to like retain the image of Madonna's wedding dress in my memory. So I've had to like relook it up. She's wearing a fucking like cowboy hat or some shit, like a black cowboy hat under her veil.
Yeah.
Tacky.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
isn't your
cool.
brother Christopher Ciccone? Cool. Did he tell you to wear that shit?
It's very like I don't know, like Desperately Seeking Susan kind of vibes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like cool. I liked it, but no, I do love I think that would make a really great movie on its own. Just like the idea that she's secretly calling all these paparazzi at the wedding, and like, you know, she has all these contracts with like photographers and shit, and he thinks that they're just showing up, and like, he's like, you know, it's just that alone is just like, well, how did this ever? It was never gonna work.
There is no way to do a biopic on somebody's life who has had longevity like that in just one movie. It just cannot happen. Mm-hmm. That's why you see so many like Marilyn Monroe movies that are like My Weekend with Marilyn or something like that. You know? And I think that works so much better because you isolate a certain period of time. They just need like an actress to like stick with all of those movies or turn it into a series, right? Like they need something like that. Because just the Sean and Madonna relationship alone is one movie, you know,
Sean
or
and
a
Madonna.
couple episodes. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Don't say that because Lifetime's going to pick that shit up. Oh my gosh. They're going to change the Lucky Star to Lucky Son. You can be my lucky son. Try to avoid some copyright there. Get her to sing Satisfaction.
Get into the habit.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But Madonna, so this is like the same time where, you know, AIDS is really starting to run rampant, and Madonna's losing friends as well, just like everybody was back then, right? And so she really gets into AIDS research and funding and activism, you know. And remember that, people. Remember that she did go for social causes. She was very, like, you know, progressive in race and in, you know, accepting people for sexuality and all of that. Also, Christopher,
Can I just rant about that just for a quick second?
Let's go for it. Go ahead.
It just makes me so fucking upset. Like, that part of it makes me so angry. Watching young gay people. Listen, is Madonna cringy on TikTok? Duh. We're all we have eyes. But like, you have to respect people who deserve respect.
Yeah.
And as like a young gay person, if you don't know enough about what Madonna has done for the gay community, look it up. Mm-hmm. And before you fucking judge her, because oh my God, like this idea that female pop stars have some connection to the gay community is literally because of her. Yes. And she was doing it because those were her friends and they were the people making her art. Yeah. And like, you know, it wasn't just a thread into being a female pop star is like, you cater to the gays. Like, no, Madonna was doing that because her friends were dying and the world was like completely against all of the people that she loved. And she was giving out condoms with her albums and stuff. And I could go on about that for hours, but I just like, it just upsets me.
It's true though. It is true. Like there's totally a root there that, these today Gen Z TikTokers are not, even touching on, because Madonna's cringy on TikTok and Instagram now, right? Like that's all they're seeing, or in that she's a has-been who keeps trying, And that's the sort of perception we need to get past. That is totally irrelevant to her entire career,
Yeah.
But she does a lot of that. She also loans Christopher $200,000 to just get an apartment in New York City, right? But like he's like, Madonna's loaning me money. I wish she wouldn't do that. I wish she wouldn't give me a down payment for my apartment in New York.
I know, and he's like always broke. He's always broke, and like he never explains why he's broke. But
exactly.
Like he'll be like, I didn't have any money that year. It's like, why? Like, why are you always broke?
There's never a why. There's never a why with anything. He will complain and never give a why. We go into sort of like, I love, just also keep in mind, side note, that this entire time we've been talking, he's got a boyfriend named Danny that's like a long-term 10-year relationship for him, and we'll kind of go in and out of that, but like he doesn't really ever give many details about that. He says, I go off with Madonna on tour, I come back home and, cook with Danny for a little bit. I pay for everything, and Danny's the boss around the house. Okay, well, you're letting him be that, honestly.
Yeah.
But then we get moments like this, his sort of coming out to his dad. That's like fantastic. Go into this. Yeah. Talk more about this. Because we get a quick little moment where he's working on a car with his dad, very macho thing to do in Michigan. And the dad says, "Are you gay?" And Christopher, tenses up really quick. And like, if you're gay and you've had to come out, you know this. It's like uncomfortable. You don't ever want somebody to ask you, "Are you gay?" Right? Because then you're like, vagina and boobies. No, of course not, Dad. Of course not.
I love making love to women.
Post Madonna gave all of the gays somebody to say. We all say, "No, I love Madonna." What are you talking about? It's just the ideal woman. Generations of gays have always done that, right? I've definitely done that with the Miss Britney Spears. I said, "No, I love Britney." Yes. But so the dad asks him, "Are you gay?" And he tenses up really quick, and then he says, "Well, there's no other answer than just to say yes." And the dad takes it all right, and he kind of laughs, and he says, "Yeah, okay, well, I kind of already knew that." And then a little bit later, after the dad has had some time to sort of think on it, the dad sends him a letter and says, "I don't accept this. I think you're sick. I think, you and Danny are both sick and we need to get you guys help." And, really takes all of that back. And that was a soul crushing moment,
I know.
And I really, have a lot of sympathy for him there, because it's such a real moment as well. Like these are the things, like you've lived your own life, Christopher, right? So I understand you are so intertwined with Madonna, but tell a little bit more of your own story as well. Just like this, eventually the dad does come around and says, they stop speaking for a while, and the dad finally writes back and says, "I just, I'd rather have you in my life and accept you than not have you in my life at all."
That's why I think gay stories from the 90s are maybe the most, well, not the most interesting, but I'm really, really fascinated by 90s gay, just queer stories, because it was just such a specific time. And it was like people like their dad having to face gay culture in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like back in the day where they could just pretend that gay people didn't exist and, they just sort of hide in the shadows of the world. Like, in the 90s, gay people very much existed and were a part of the world, and were being talked about on the news. And you had people like Madonna forcing gay culture into the living rooms of people in the Midwest and shit.
Mainstreaming shit like that, right? Like what she really was funneling it in there. Not just her alone. There was tons of people doing it, There was a whole group of mainstream artists really doing that. But give her the fucking credit for doing that,
I know.
It speaks
and
volumes.
Seeing us as people.
She walked the walk, man. She walked the walk.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there, the performative activism and all of that, but she really did she did the damn thing. Christopher does, I love how little gay brother to gay icon pop star Christopher is. He gets to direct the Blonde Ambition tour. I
Oh
didn't know
my
this as
God.
well. I didn't know this. But he's like, I get to direct the tour, but I hate having to dress her. And it's like, dude, come on. He's always like, I got to do this. But I had to do this. I had to slip some panties on her, you know?
She'll only let me do it,
Oh my
unfortunately.
God. Well, then just say no to dressing her, man. You already got your check from directing. I think throughout this entire thing, also, she's just not paying him fairly because he is little brother and she is taking advantage in that way. And we're going to get to the pinnacle of that a little bit later. But, when Truth or Dare starts filming, I think like this was kind of, this is Madonna, though. And I think it's worth noting, that she, during the filming of Truth or Dare, him and his other siblings don't, like, his sister just brings them up and is like, hey, let's go see Mom's grave. And they're all like, okay, we'll go do that. And they show up and she's got a camera crew with them. And I would have been livid, right? I'd have been gone.
Yeah.
But he like sticks around and like doesn't really tell her to go fuck herself, right? Because this is not okay. But like this is...
And it's Madonna.
It's a weird psychological thing, man, right? Because he does remark that Truth or Dare is supposed to be a documentary, but like she's acting throughout the whole thing. This is like a performance for her. And I see it. I totally see it. I think so,
Yeah. I like his okay, I will tell you. I really enjoy his perspective of things like this sort of nuanced, like only he could have this very pure perspective of this moment. This moment that everybody knows, Truth or Dare is so famous, right? But like, he's able to immediately clock that she's acting, and she's pretending to be a difficult, confident pop star because she's aware that that's the image that she's creating is like this sort of like bitchy pop star, when really she's kind of like insecure and like very like, in herself all the time and closed off, but she's pretending to be like whatever. I just really like that.
She does out him in a magazine where I think it's The Advocate she's talking to, and she outs him and he's pretty upset about this. Again, like, not cool. She's not the saint in this book. And I like seeing some of that, because we already know this is kind of her, and I'm not shocked by anything I'm seeing, anything that he talks about, like Madonna outing him. And then when Madonna outs him and then he goes to her and says, that really upset me. You can't just out me. And she's like, get over it. You're gay. What's the big deal? You're gay. You are gay. But what she doesn't realize is, she can tell her own story, but she can't tell everybody else's story too. But that doesn't like seem to click with her, because it seems like her entire family's story is her story, and every individual member of her family also is contributing to her story, right? So if she's talking about gay rights, gay anything, that's, she can pull Christopher out of the box and use Christopher like a little crayon to color her little picture, and she does this a lot. So and it does have some backlash, some backlash that he might have omitted the information that she never really apologized for, is that he has to go and get an AIDS test and send in the blood results in order for a magazine publication not to run that he has AIDS, right? Because they're threatening to run that he has AIDS. Like, that's traumatic as well.
Oh my God.
And she owed him a big fat fucking apology for that.
But she never sees him as like enough of like a fully realized person to like acknowledge like any sort of like trauma or like pain that he may have like gone through. Like, she does see through him basically their whole lives. And like, it gets obviously like way more out of control, but like, you can tell that there's this like, he has this idea in his mind that she's never fully like seen him.
Yes.
She's always kind of looking through him.
I think she did, especially like during the early years. I feel like she saw him and she recognized that and nurtured that. But and this wasn't any fault of his own. I mean, everybody would take an opportunity like handed to them, right? But like the more opportunities he was accepting from her, she was seeing him more as like somebody there at her beck and call, and somebody there that was supposed to be there to serve her, right? And so his story was free game for her. It just got to this weird like blurry place where nobody was able to really distinguish personal from the business.
I also think it's worth mentioning that in this specific like time period, like pre-Guy, they're doing all this work together. You know, he like is doing the tours and he's like decorating her homes and shit for like extra money because he's like always broke. And it's important to note that he has free reign. Like he is allowed to, she trusts him.
Yes.
Like if there's one thing that she does see when it comes to him is that he artistically, like they vibe.
Yeah.
And she trusts him. And like when he says something, like she does it on stage, like, and that changes so drastically.
Yeah.
You know, of her trusting his artistic expression.
He has a long-term relationship with Danny. Remember, it's about a decade, and then they break up. You know, he says that Danny, he doesn't really go into the why Danny wasn't good for him. Danny was just like mistreating him. You know, Danny was too overpowering and too, you know, he was bossy and mean, but like we don't really hear any instances of that. But they break up, and Christopher gives him $100,000 to like go away, you know, like as like a parting gift. And Danny's mom still calls Christopher and is like, "Hey, you owe him alimony." And Christopher's like, "I'm just not even answering that, right?" And then you have like little moments where, you know, Madonna writes him a supportive letter about this. The way that the letters that I wish I could have like read all of them. I want to just read through all of their letters together between each other because they're so hoity-toity and like all of this really big flowery language and like the sentence structures. Don't you love it, though? I do. Oh. I just need it read to me, you know, like a full book.
It's like, all the totally. Letters. It's like Great Expectations or something, the way that they write to each other. Like, and they're like, I'm like, they're siblings. Like they're like ink-dipped letters. Yes. Like writing with a quill pen. It's wild.
Dearest Christopher, the sky may be a little inky gray, but after the trees clear in the fall, you know, just whatever the fuck. I don't fucking know. Okay, my mind cannot work that way. But they are both exactly like this. And if you read this book, he even writes his book in that same way. So they are very, you know, they are a hoity-toity little, you know, fancy pantses. He goes into like Madonna's search for Lourdes's dad as well, and she considers I laughed so much at this. She considered Dennis Rodman as Lourdes's dad.
She wanted Dennis Rodman's sperm.
The daddy chair. They were going through he had this joke that she was just looking for somebody to sit in the daddy chair. And she was going through a bunch of people, but she did want Dennis Rodman. She wanted a little Lourdes Rodman.
You know, forever ago, I did a Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra episode for Dunzo, and Dennis actually said that Madonna wanted his sperm so bad, specifically his sperm. She wanted him to literally give her a baby, so she flew him from Vegas to wherever she was, whatever part of the world, to have sex with her, and then she flew him back to Vegas. So he, like, before a game, like, went and fucked her, and then went back and finished, and, like, started the game.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you imagine?
I'm picturing Dennis Rodman of today who, like, flies over to North Korea every other month, you know? Like,
I know. But it's hot when you picture it as like crop top, like 90s.
Yeah, there was a certain like Dennis Rodman of the time, so I get it, Madonna. I get it. It doesn't, and like there was a lot of jokes about at the time that I remember. You know, just reading about that, you know, everybody always said she was just looking for the sperm donor, you know, and that she didn't really care about dad. I think there's a lot of truth in that, but I do think that she, like, you know, if the dad would have worked out, she'd been really happy about it because then, you know, she gets to be mother and father and baby, you know, all happy family. Sure. But she didn't give a fuck about a dad. She didn't care who it was. No. She said she didn't care about race, but she wanted them to be like really smart and really creative or something like that, right? And so Lourdes's dad comes in and she gets pregnant, you know, and she has the baby, and not long after that, you know, they break up because of course they're gonna break up. She just got the baby out of it. All she needs is with the little Lourdes. This is where we get Ray of Light Madonna. She's like very like,
Yeah, totally. That's where, and then we got our little star.
His house. I love every time he says Coconut Grove. It just like sends my tinkles into a spiral, you know.
Oh my
it's
God,
like a really
yeah.
good word. That's a really good like pairing of words there. Coconut Grove, Coconut Grove, Coconut Grove. But he's decorating all of her houses for her. He has a lot of access to her at this time. He's like getting to do a lot of work for her, but he's always bemoaning everything that he has to do for her. This is where it's really starting to ramp up, right? He always puts it like he's trapped, but he can also just go and leave whenever he wants. He doesn't have to work for her. But this is the easiest job that takes no effort to get, you know? All he has to do is ring her up and say, hey, do you have a job for me? And she says yes, right? But he could go out and try to make his own way, get his own job, like work like she did, you know, because she worked. Yeah. She was out there. She was in the trenches making her own damn way. And he never had to do any of that. He never really learned how to do that. He didn't have to do that. And so, you know, he's never worried about losing a job because he always knows that she can, you know, if he goes off and gets a job somewhere else, he knows that his sister can hire him if he loses that job at some point. And he goes through his whole life like this, right? And he keeps doing it. He's buying paintings on her behalf. This is when we start getting into some of the contract stuff that I really, really am excited to talk about. This motherfucker, and never learns the entire way through this book. Should have been his first lesson here, right? He's buying all these paintings for her house because she wants to get into art, which is a really good way to like invest your money, right? And so she's having him bid on all these paintings if she wants to, you know, he recommends a couple million on a Picasso and she's like, do it, you know, I'm clutching my purse, but do it, you know, really good investments like that. And it's really good. And he has a really good eye for stuff like that. There's a couple landscape paintings that he like convinces her to buy. And then he buys them with his own money, like $65,000 of his own money. And she says she doesn't want them anymore. And he's like, well, I just bought them. I'm out all this money. I don't have money like this. And she's like, I don't care, just sell them. And it takes him like 6 months to sell these damn paintings. First off, you don't front your super famous celebrity sister any fucking money. Don't ever do that. You get a company card, you get a little card that says your name on it, right? You get something. Second, have a fucking contract in place so that shit like that can't happen.
Right.
And it's just wild that he never learns from this, right? He does for the next job right after this, try to get a contract, and he sends her over the contract with a note, a very nice, sweet note that says, hey, I know this is a little awkward. We've never really done a contract like this, but it's just, you know, it's standard in the industry. It's standard in the business. This is just she's fucking pissed. She's like, oh, I will never. And they send each other very like strongly flowery worded faxes.
Yeah.
Yes. Back and forth. And then, Madonna's pissed about it. He sends back, you know, they really like poke each other's buttons. And eventually like he folds and apologizes, which is fine, whatever. But he never asked for a contract.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for him for a second, okay?
All right.
Because there's a sort of feeling throughout the book where you could picture this with any major celebrity, right? Like interchange Madonna with anybody, where like you kind of have to tiptoe around them. It's like landmines.
Yeah.
And like if you do something that pisses them off, like Whitney's family used to worry about this with her a lot, where like if they said something too strongly worded about her going to rehab or anything like that, it was like, okay, well then guess what? You're not allowed past the gate. You're not going to see my daughter. Like you're not invited to this party. You're not invited to the wedding, all those things. And it always felt like he was just like one like bad conversation away from her cutting him off and never speaking to him again, which is his worst fear at the time. And I think he did a lot of things. I think that he probably would have, you know, made her sign contracts and stuff because the stuff that they were doing was so, I mean, he's designing her entire house, buying Picassos, like doing, literally choreographing her tour. Like it's stuff that requires a fucking contract. And I think that he must have just not done it out of fear, knowing that she would get mad if he presented it. You
But
know?
then why is he working for her? This is like
I know.
this has to be like a decade or over into their working
I
relationship
know.
together. How have you not, planted these seeds she's been dropping to you and grown
Right.
something out of it, right? Use these opportunities you've had to go and branch
Yeah.
out your business, and create different
Yeah.
businesses and different things. Like talks about he gets to work for a restaurant at one point, right? But they're not paying him, and like he does all of these little things, but like never has any drive or motivation to really go out on his own and do things in a
Mhm.
way that is going to like be spread by word of mouth and get to that'll grow his business. He always like looks at Madonna as the fallback. The job
Mhm.
for Madonna's always going to be there. That's your fucking problem, man. That's your problem.
Yeah.
And he like blames it on her. He's like, well, she blacklisted me in the industry, right? Like I could never get a job because of her. That's not true though. Like if you had built yourself up at some point, he like starts. He's a painter. I've seen his paintings. They're really good. He
Mhm.
has a
They're
few
really
art.
good.
He has a few art shows. And they go really well and they sell, right? But then he has plenty of times in the books where he's like, I'm not painting anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing that anymore.
Mhm.
It's because he gets lazy and complacent, right? And he's just like, if he needs a little bit of money, he never has fucking money, but if he needs a little bit of money, the Coconut Grove house needs a new renovation, right?
It's so true.
That's what he's always looking at it like. So I'm sorry that it must have been really scary working for her. Then you don't work for her. You move
Yeah.
on. You move
Take your
on.
power back.
Sorry. Madonna
You're
thinks
right.
because
No, you're right.
no, I mean, and I think you're completely right as well. I just think like, he it is scary working for Madonna. I would be terrified working for Madonna. I think that she's probably like such a nightmare to work for. Like I completely believe everything he's saying about all of this, and that like she goes from him talking back one time to she thinks he's a drug addict, right? Like immediately she thinks he's a
God,
drug
I
addict because he
know.
talks back to her and she's like, this must be your behavior. It's because you are addicted to drugs, right? Like, don't work for your sister. That's your relationship is souring because your business relationship is not working. Step back from that.
Yeah. It's just, and it's the fear of like I just know myself, and I
Yeah.
know like if I had access to that life through one relationship that was like not solid, like the fear of losing being a part of that orbit,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I feel like I probably would be a little like, ugh, like I would be so afraid of not being
Let's talk about the
in the
orbit that
orbit.
he's in a little bit. You want to talk about the
Okay,
orbit that he's in? Okay, he's hanging out with
I
people
would
like
love
fucking Demi
to.
Moore, Johnny Depp,
Oh my
Kate
god,
Moss, Naomi Campbell. He's like always doing fucking cocaine with Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell,
Gwyneth.
right? Gwyneth Paltrow. I love that that Donatella's having a dinner at one point, and and J
Oh
Lo
my god.
Lo's supposed to come, and Madonna's sitting at the head of the table next to Gwyneth, and she's like, "We're not speaking to J Lo." She says Gwyneth can't act, and
Oh,
I can't sing. Like they like cold shoulder J Lo, but there's another fucking story where this was my favorite one of the whole book it's right after Donatello's brother dies and is murdered, right? And so she's pretty much grieving, and they're having a sort of like it's like a post funeral thing, but it sounds like a party to me. They're having this sort of
mm,
party at Donatella's house, and Courtney Love is acting like she's never done drugs before, and she's doing all these drugs. And she's like, I've never done coke before. And Christopher's like, she's like, show me how to do coke. And he's like rolling his eyes and like giving her coke. And she's like, this is the first time I've tried coke. This is the second time I've tried coke. Every line she does, she's counting until he has to say, Courtney, shut the fuck up. Stop counting. Meanwhile, Donatella's like sobbing in the corner saying, Christopher, Christopher, play Candle in the Wind
Christopher.
again, again.
Christopher. And I love that Courtney, when she pulls the coke out, she goes,
Yeah.
"Whoa, I have this.
What is this? Is
What
baking
is it?
powder?
You guys know?"
Meanwhile, Edward Norton's coming up the fucking stairs, and Courtney is supposed to be sober, and she's like, "Tell him I'm a fucking sleep."
That part of when he starts to infiltrate the celebrity circle,
Yeah.
that's my favorite part.
It is good. It is good, and I always go back to like Courtney Love's Behind the Music episode, which is really good fucking episode of Behind the Music, by the way. It's like one of their best episodes ever. She rocked that fucking episode. But her whole Edward Norton relationship timeline is like, there is no drug use. She is good. Edward Norton's wife, never lies you tell.
The lies you tell.
Lies you tell.
And I love, okay, so this is a controversial opinion.
Okay.
I'm just going to say it.
Okay.
I have a real soft spot in my heart for Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
And
weird, too. It's a weird one.
I know. And it's because I have always viewed her the way he describes her in this book.
Okay.
Like, that because he says in the book that, like, you know, the more that he and Madonna separate, the more Gwyneth kind of becomes, like, his pseudo-sister.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, they become very close. And, like, I've always viewed Gwyneth as somebody who's, like, pretending to be somebody else. Like, I think that the whole, like, goop vagina candle thing is, like, her being really smart at, like, creating a fake image. And it makes a lot of money. She doesn't fucking use any of that shit. Like, it's not real. You know what I mean? To me, Gwyneth, low-key, is, like, a chain-smoking, wine-drinking girl who will, like, who's, like, fun. Like, to me, she is the girl that used to hang out with Winona Ryder and get fucked up.
Oh my gosh.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Truly dressed in the Wes Anderson costume, you know, like that's how she actually looks in real life.
Yeah, like, I think that her and Brad were fucking big ass potheads that would just, like,
I can
have
see
sex
that
everywhere.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that she's, like, actually, like, a chill girl, but she has this image of a wasp. And it makes her a lot of money to be like a wasp.
But it is interesting, all of the women that he paints against his sister Madonna. He's always painting Madonna as this woman who just fucking sucks, man, right? This little bitch, Madonna. And then all of these women that he's surrounding himself with, like Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss, and like, you're gonna tell me that all of these people are better than your fucking sister? They're all in the same damn circle. What are you talking about? Right? They're all living for the moment at this moment in time. This specific time period, they're not forming close relationships with you. They're having fucking fun. You're their party buddy, you know?
Like it's 90s Naomi Campbell, like, girl.
But then he like talks about, he's like, oh, well, they throw me a birthday party, you know, these are my real friends. And it's like, of course they throw you a birthday party. Did you hear the word you just said? Party. Of course they're gonna throw you a birthday party. Like, listen. I love that.
You're right.
I love that Madonna calls Courtney crazy. It's like, Madonna thinks Courtney is crazy. Need a whole fucking Courtney Love and Madonna episode, and Madonna thinks that they're like twin flames.
I know, and like whenever they're in the same place, she's always like trying to avoid seeing her, or like avoiding like having to run into her, or have like a moment.
What did Courtney Love say? She said in this book, she said that they are. She said, I think we are. Oh. Joan Crawford and Betty Davis.
Yes.
Never worked together.
Brilliant.
Have never worked together. Never done a movie. Never done a song. Do not run in the same circles, really. But still, like they're Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. Okay.
Yes, I loved that part of the book. Made me so happy.
It did. All of this stuff, like the inner circle. This is the inner circle section of the book, and it's really, really good. We're getting to the Guy Ritchie part now. So Madonna is like infatuated with Guy Ritchie, right? She's got Lourdes. She's ready for a husband. She's ready to become the English Rose. So she marries Guy Ritchie, and Christopher does not like Guy, and I do not like Guy either. And I totally believe everything he says about Guy in this. He says the guy is so homophobic, always making homophobic jokes towards Christopher. And Christopher really heavily implies it's because Guy is gay. And it's probably like, I see it. Guy's definitely the guy who would either get sucked off or, you know, do a 69 with a guy and then never speak to him again, right? Or like completely ignore him in a cold shoulder room.
He's the guy that would put his dick through a hole at the airport.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he probably did. He's just not arrested
you
yet,
know?
Right? In a bathroom in a park or somewhere or something. You know, he's cruising somewhere. Christopher's always like, anytime Guy kind of pokes at Christopher pokes right back. So like Guy, like picks Christopher up. They're like all dancing at one point, right? And Madonna never get drinks or anything. She doesn't do drugs. She doesn't drink. So she's like dancing sober on a table, which is cringy.
Yeah.
But, guy like picks up Christopher from the back and like lifts him up with like a little joke, and Christopher gets down. Christopher's a massive dude, by the way. We should have mentioned this at the start. He's huge. And he like corners a guy into like the wall and starts grinding on him. And he's like, "If you're gonna dance with me, this is how we dance here." He starts, and the guy gets all mad and like runs away.
You know, I didn't know that Guy. I didn't really know a lot about Guy.
Yeah.
And then I remember watching. Have you ever seen her reinvention tour DVD?
Yes.
Yeah. Where she's like with
all
Guy
the black and white parts,
the whole
right?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like at the pub and like all that, and like he comes in the back to like see her before the show and stuff, and he's such a dick. He's such an asshole, and he's such a broy, beer chugging, like oi 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 fucking douchebag. Like, I just was so shocked that he, you know, was like the man that really like locked her down. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. But Madonna still like allows it, which is fucking weird. So this is Madonna like turning her sort of back on like everything she has stood for before, right? And it's always a guy that can make her fucking do this shit. It's always the guy that can make her bend over, you know. She's like, you know, not he's treating her brother pretty badly, and she's just kind of allowing it, right? They get married at this big castle in Scotland. Christopher like complains about his room, by the way. He's like, "She put me in the top of the castle. I'm looking out at the pool and the spa and everything." And I said, I guess I will have to sit this one out, or I guess I'll have to deal with this for a week. Let me put on my $100,000 Balenciaga suit for this wedding.
And then he's like, "I paired my suit with a Vivienne Westwood cape against
That's
what
it was. Vivienne Westwood. That was
okay, Queen."
But
calm
he's
down.
like complaining about it, and he waits till Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell get there, and he says, "Guys, you'll never believe what type of room they put me in, and you'll never believe." Like, guys also making homophobic jokes. He's making homophobic jokes, and they're like, "Come on, let's do some cocaine," and they all do drugs for the rest of the weekend, right? I did think it was like really fucked up that. Rewinding a little bit, that Madonna made him like pay his own way to this fucking wedding. Because again, there's always payment disputes. She'll hire him for the job. It's time for payment to be collected. He's like fronting his own money and shit like that. And then when the time comes, she like withholds payment and like has like an assistant or somebody ring him up and say, Madonna isn't going to pay you unless you use part of your payment to get a ticket to her wedding, right? I'm like, bullshit. This is why you need a fucking contract, man. Like, this is your own fucking fault. I'm sorry. At this point, this is his own fucking fault. And he says that by the time he buys his plane ticket, he only has a couple $100s left. How much do people get paid for design jobs? Because that doesn't sound right. What would a first class ticket be at that point? It would be like 1,000 something. It must have, right?
Well, the other really weird thing too was like, okay, so I went to his website today before we started recording.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to see like what other work he had been doing since, just in general, like what he's worked on. And, you know, his work is very stuck in the 90s. Like he doesn't have a lot of like music video or whatever work outside of that time period, but he was working. Like he did a music video for like Dolly Parton. He's done one for like Reba McEntire. Like he has like random projects.
He doesn't say any of that. So how was I supposed to know that? Like, he doesn't say any of this in here.
But also, where's the money?
Where's the money? It's drugs. It's drugs.
Oh, well,
I understand that he probably wasn't a drug addict. And if he was, then okay, he doesn't have to admit it in here. But, like, that's just what he was doing. Just say that. I was partying. I was just partying. I was spending it all on drugs, right? This is what he probably doesn't say, but I guarantee is the case, is sometimes with celebrities, they will forget that they have all of the money, right? And Madonna's sister or Madonna's brother probably doesn't. And they're like, Christopher, pay the dealer real quick. And he'll go and pay the dealer, you know?
Oh, right.
And so he's using all of his money for X, Y, and Z, going out and partying with all these celebrities who have the fucking money to go out and party like this. And he cannot keep up. Madonna goes into the Drowned World Tour and hires Jamie King instead of Christopher Ciccone.
So he goes to the Drowned World Tour rehearsal to see what they're working on. And like, you know, he's like, I really thought that this was an interesting take that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the tour is like extremely dark.
Yeah.
And he is not allowed to work on this one. And he can tell immediately that, you know, it's like it feels disjointed. Like it doesn't feel like it's like really Madonna.
Yeah.
And then he realizes that it's like because she's in this really, really dark place. And it's like reflective of like how she's feeling. And that's like wild because she's like newly married. And
Yeah.
she was in such a dark mental place.
Yeah.
Like the Drowned World Tour is so dark and like violent.
It is. It is. And it's like absolutely like he does a lot of shitting on her own artistic vision, right?
Yes.
There was a recent-ish interview that he did where he basically said that any shows she's done after like the Blonde Ambition tour were just, you know, she lost sight of what the audience wants. And what he is not getting is that this is a snapshot into her own psyche, right? So if the Drowned World Tour is so dark, then something's going on. And he mentions all the time, like, he always sticks it to her if they're arguing as like, you're clearly going through something in life. I'll let you go through that. And like pokes at her like that. She was a woman who was dealing with a very sexist, ageist public. She was she was over 40 at this point, right? She had to have been because she had Lourdes late in 30s or early 40s. And she, you know, so she's trying to figure it out who she is as a star and like how to like sort of mold herself as a star. She tried Ray of Light. That was super successful. But, you know, she tries this English Rose, you know, English housewife role to Guy Ritchie. She probably was super fucking attracted to Guy Ritchie, as we all are, to like toxic men like that, right?
Sure.
But that was, if she was able to step back and look through it like through a hindsight lens, that would never have been somebody she would have picked, right? But like she saw a vision of herself as somebody who was probably at a certain age, a woman of a certain age. What should a woman of a certain age be like, right? And so she was trying to fit herself into a mold that she just didn't fit into. And her one outlet is creativity like this, right? Like she's contemplating a lot of religion. She's contemplating a lot of different things. She's getting into Kabbalah. She's like, we see all of that pouring out of these things, and he just goes and sticks it to these. This isn't what her audience wants to hear. This isn't what the gays want to hear, right? He doesn't get it.
It's so wrong.
He doesn't know. He doesn't get it.
He's so wrong. Like, if anything, her audience, I think, views that time period as a turning point to when I'm not going to say when she like became a real artist or whatever, but like when she really leaned into her artistry in a way that felt like she like knew who the fuck she was, and like you couldn't rattle her at that point. Like she did things. The visuals of that tour are so incredible, so beautiful. It's all so perfectly put together. And if anything, it's like, thank God she stopped working with him.
Yeah.
Thank God. Because
what would he have turned this into as well, right?
Oh like, my God.
Like she very much had a pulse on what she wanted, and B, what was the natural next step for her. Like she'd never really gone through a dark period before. Everybody goes through a dark period. Totally. Everybody shows it, right? Totally. Britney's Blackout album. This was the blackout period for Madonna, right? Yes. But he's always shitting on her vision. If it's not his vision being projected onto her, it's not good. You know, it's nothing good. Yeah. The sex book, he had shit to say about the sex book. I was mind blown. I was like,
oh, I know.
What do you have to say about the sex book? He thought it should be a leather bound, like, I don't know, 500 copy edition or something like that. I don't know. A certain, like a limited number. And she's like, no, I'm going to make it a metal book and I'm going to like sell the fuck out of it. And she did. Yeah, she sold out of all of it. It was so successful that bookstores were even charging like $5 to $10 just for people to look through it in the bookstore. She fucking had her pulse on exactly what needed to happen in her own career. And he still shits on it. He's like, well, I don't think that was the right way to go. Clearly it was, though, Mr. Christopher Ciccone.
Yeah, and like he had such a distinct, like even when I was looking at his other music videos, I was like, oh, like he has a very specific style. It's very girly show. It's very 90s, very like burlesque beads and all of that stuff. And like that's great. But like Madonna was so beyond that
Yeah.
at that point. Like she, like you said, she was a woman. She had a kid. Like she was married.
She
She
was
was
just
like,
trying things out. She was
yeah,
trying things out. She was practicing. She was just doing other things with her craft and seeing how far her limits could kind of go. She's always
right.
loaning him money. He gets like a restaurant deal and he gets like stake in the ownership of the restaurant. She invests $45,000 in that damn restaurant, right? She doesn't have to do
Yeah.
that. He gets another job for her and she pays him $10,000 to get started, $5,000 for the first month, 15,000 for the second month, 15,000 for the third month, and 5,000 if it takes longer than projected. But the only stipulation is that he has to like devote all of his time to this project, right? He says that this is a really low rate for a designer in the industry, and I do wonder if that's true. I'd have to believe him. I'm inclined to believe him. I'm
Yeah.
sure he knows.
Yeah.
Because she did hire somebody to finish a project before, and like he charged her like way too much.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And she was like, oh, let me go back to Christopher. So he's like doing the work, but as he's describing working on her houses for her, she like tells him what she wants and what Guy wants, and then he complains and he pushes back at every little thing that she says she wants. He's always saying, well, no, this works better. Dude, you're there to do the job. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, if she has her own specific vision for this, you listen to what your boss is telling you to do, or you go get a different job. She hired your eye. I'm sure she gave him plenty of creative liberties. And then the things that she really demanded that she wanted, he just didn't like, whether it clashed
Yeah.
with his style or wasn't what he was thinking. But that's your boss. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's almost like he was angry that she wasn't giving up full control of her life to him anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry. Like
That's the living vicarious through, right? How would he decorate his own mansion, right?
Right.
But that's not what you're there to do. You're there to put guys' clothes in a closet. You're designing the closet for guys' clothes and his ties and everything. She ends up firing him because she says he's super combative and like always, and like I totally believe it. I'm like, yeah, she doesn't want to hear it. And she does try not to pay him. She also figures out again, where's your contract, man? Where's your contract? Wouldn't be having this problem if you had a contract with her.
right.
She also finds out that he's been charging a markup. So like every piece of furniture he buys, he marks up the price that he charges to her. And he says that that's how like most designers get a fee. And I wonder if that's true because she's paying him also, right? Like she's paying him a set sum. Do designers do that? Do you know anything about that?
Well, he said in the book that it's like that's also the standard. I don't know anything about that, but I thought that was a little. I don't know. Maybe that is the standard, but it does feel weird to like just lie to somebody about the price or something,
or just like nuts. Yeah, like wouldn't you say that? Wouldn't you mention that?
Like, wouldn't you say the markup?
Yeah, because you're getting all of this money, whether it's like below industry standard or above. You're getting all of this money in a flat fee. And then you're charging markup on top of that. So is that usually? I don't know if anybody knows. Let us know.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's real. But she's like pissed and says that he's stealing from her, and so she like fucking shuts him out. She's like done with his ass. Right? She flips out.
Her letter is like I loathe the idea that you would steal from me, and I'm disgusted.
Yeah.
It's like so one of their weird like ink dipped letters to each other.
It's fucking, I don't know. It's their relationship is basically just at a point of no return by now. He tracks their relationship all the way up to 2007. This book comes out in 2008. So like this book even further damages that, right? There's like hardly any time for him. He writes this out of bitterness, out of anger, out of everything. Like he just is blinded by all of this stuff and writes this book, puts it out July 2008. It is a successful book. It like sells pretty high. I think it's number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. And you know, she's having to field that. At the same time, that same fall, she files for divorce from Guy Ritchie. So she was already going through shit, right? And then you're airing out all of this other stuff. And I get it. You're wanting the credit for all of the work that you've done that you feel like your sister hasn't given you. And I don't believe she did give him the credit he deserved, right? She didn't pay him fairly. She didn't give him the credit fairly, but like still there's a certain tact that you have to go about doing something like this, and putting a domestic violence survivor's stories into this, injecting stories like that, or injecting certain things you just can't do. Yeah. And he still does it. Like, he tells her story for her, rather than telling his own stories. Why didn't you just write your own memoir talking about everything you did for Madonna? And how you did it, like how you came. What were your inspirations behind the Girly Show?
Oh, I would have loved to see that
behind the scenes shit like that. Like, give a full play-by-play on like every idea you ever had for Madonna, and we would have gotten the point, right? Like, you did the Madonna thing, you created the Madonna thing, if that's what he's going for. But instead, he just has to get a jab at every single thing she ever does. They did kind of reconcile a little bit 5 or 6 years later. That's what I've read. And then he did another article he like talked about it more, and he's like, I didn't even talk that bad about Madonna. I have all of these stories about Madonna. I could have written that book. That's the book I could have written, right? Just goes off bashing her again, bashes Lady Gaga on the way, just and reignites another feud. And then I think more recently they're patched up. I just don't think they're ever going to be as close again.
When I was reading this book, I was like, God, like, I love this insight of this time period, but my God, what I would give to know what's going on right now.
Yes.
I want the book about Madonna in her house now.
Yes.
I need to know the weirdness. You and I say this all the time about Britney too. It's like, people are so not used to seeing a celebrity be like not curated.
Yeah.
And I know that Madonna is the queen of like Photoshop and stuff. I'm not saying she doesn't curate her image, obviously, but there is something a little unhinged about her online presence, where it's like she just doesn't care.
There's no strategy
and I think
with
it's
it.
Really, she's just posting shit.
Yeah,
and I think it's unsettling for people to see a celebrity be on the internet and not be like fucking Kylie Jenner. Yeah, I appreciate you for making me read this, because I've always wanted to. I can't believe I never have. It just never happened. But this has now become easily one of my favorite books. I'm going to read this so many times.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on for this one. This was a long-winded episode, but we got through it. And you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, my name is Troy McEady. I have a podcast called Beyond the Blinds. You can find us by just searching Beyond the Blinds on everything. And I have another podcast that I host by myself called Dunzo, that Zach has been on like 90 times. And it's spelled Dunzo. And yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for coming on, Troy, and we will see you guys next time.